teacher's lesson that stuck out to you? Still this side of the room? Anyone? Guys, I heard great stuff.
There was an instructional routine.
Yes, there was an instructional routine. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, maybe not. No. Okay, kind of. Anyone over here? Yes. Yes, you cannot teach all of the roots and the morphemes and all of the things all at once, but if you can show them connections between those words with some sort of strategy, yes, that's a great connection. Thank you. Yes, changing the affixes changes the meaning. And one thing that I loved is Anita Archer, you notice that she used the word that was in the text. Like she talked from the word impressed. She didn't say impress or impressing. She talked from impressed. I thought that was, pretty spectacular. All right, we are going to go on and talk a little bit more about that language comprehension side. Oh, we're good.
We have enjoyed the conversation that we've been able to have with all of you, and we really appreciate your candor when talking about it, because that helps us to know what it's like, what you're experiencing. Now that Stephanie talked about the encoding, decoding, we will talk about the language comprehension side. And we talked about food, so and we have food coming, hopefully. I probably should not say that after last week. As you know, we've been talking about recipes. I told you about my lasagna catastrophe. So Stephanie, you had such a great illustration when you did the 80%, 90%, 100% accuracy that I felt like I had to have something like comparable to that. So I thought about myself as a teacher 20 something years ago, and when I used to teach skills in isolation, and I would say, okay kids, today we're going to read this paragraph and you're going to find the main idea. Well, that's what my simulation is about. So if I said to you, we're going to read this and I'm going to ask you to find the main idea. So pretend for just a minute that you're the students in my class and this is the passage that I'm giving to you. See if you can find the main idea. Could we read most of these words? Okay, so we can read the words. Let's see if in theory, if I can read the words, can I understand what was supposed to happen with the main idea? We had some steps in the confit de canard process. Last week we had a French teacher turned reading specialist, so she was really helpful with this. She helped me try to pronounce it. We know what it says, but do we know what we're supposed to do? So we have some words like trussing and barding. Do we know what that means? It asks us to do trussing. Maybe some people do, some people don't. And if I asked you, could you do this? Could you confit canard? How many of you would feel confident that you understood what you read?
It would turn out like that lasagna you made.
I know. Thank you, Stephanie, for pointing that out. It's so knowing how to do something and understanding it is different than just reading it. I have to be able to understand what this is saying in order to comprehend it and get into that language side, which is what we're going to talk about. By the way, canard, does anyone know what that is? It's a duck. So if you like duck, it's basically this recipe is making, in this situation, it's like a paste, a duck meat paste that you put on crackers. Not sure that I would be interested.
Pate.
Like pate. Yes, pate from our French friend. So when we are testing comprehension, we're testing these things. Not only did I know what the words were, I recognized them, which we did in some of those situations and those simulations we gave. But understanding what the vocabulary meant, what trussing meant, what barding meant, we didn't know that. Background knowledge. How important was background knowledge in that situation? That French teacher last week, she started explaining, it's like pate. This is what confité canard means. And she knew because she had the background knowledge and the recipe had a lot of French background. The language structures, the complexity of the sentences, breaking it down. Too often when I was a first year teacher, and sometimes this still happens to those teachers we encounter today, they think about the product, the main idea, instead of the process. Could the student do the process? Or are they just asking for the main idea? So we're gonna dig into that. We talked about content knowledge. This is our simplification of this that I love to think about is it's mental Velcro. Giving them the knowledge, the background, so that what you're going to talk to them about, what they're going to read, is gonna stick. Of course, we have the vocabulary, the meaning, the foundations of the words, like we saw with Anita Archer, pre-teaching those words. If I had had a chance to pre-teach you what trussing and barding meant, you may have understood and had a better idea of what was happening in that passage. Language structures, the sequence of the words. When the sentences are complex, can we break them down to simplify? Our verbal reasoning, teaching students or talking about how to logically work through problems, making inferences, asking questions, that deeper level of thinking. And then our literacy knowledge. How is what they're reading organized? Do we see a purpose, the author's purpose? The visual cues, are there charts, are there pictures for that? As we spend time looking at practices for EBLI, I want you to think about, there are teachers in your buildings that are already solid in this. They have a solid foundation. Who are those teachers, and could they model it for the other teachers, just like the Anita Archer video? I had a teacher who was an expert at this, and I actually asked her, can I take a video of you, just like we had with Anita Archer, so that I can show it to the other teachers? They can watch it at home. Maybe they can't get into your classroom. And at first she thought, I'm not so sure video, I don't know if I'd like to be videoed. I said, it's okay, I'm just gonna show it to these people. And once we did, she realized how impactful her teaching was. And that experience that she had helped the other teachers. As we dig a little bit more deeply into content knowledge, that mental Velcro, we like to give students a taste of what they're going to read. There's a picture of Stephanie and I teaching at the end of this presentation, and I'm all dressed up because I did a unit on the Titanic with my students. So I had to give them a taste. The Titanic was a big boat. Well, that's great, but why was it important? Why is it something that we keep coming back to and talking about? What really happened? How many people were on it? Were there kids? Yes, and giving them that mental Velcro so when we start reading, they're interested because they understand it sticks. That vocabulary, giving enough time to warm up with those words, those high utility words. We actually have instructional protocols. I don't know how many of you have seen them on our website that go through a routine for vocabulary. And we have them for the content area teachers too. And we also have different types of word structures and things like that, word webs that could be printed off and just used in the classroom. So using that vocabulary. Our verbal reasoning, those critical thinking skills, going deeper, that process of reading it multiple times, maybe in it for a different point of view or for a different reason. Yes? That is an excellent question. I know that it is an actual text. I'm not sure what the access would be, but we can find out for you. Remind us, because that would be really helpful if we were able. I'm sure that we can find it. Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. For thinking deeper in verbal reasoning. And so when we think about verbal reasoning, I like to think of a book that comes to mind is The Book Thief. I don't know how many of you have read that book. Death is the narrator. And when you're thinking about death at first, you're thinking to yourself, this is really weird. This perspective that death is watching all these characters and you don't know who death is coming for. The verbal reasoning in that situation is, okay, this is an interesting perspective. How is he able to see what's happening? And it takes a while. You have to question and you have to inference to figure out what is happening in this story and who's really telling the story. So getting your students to do that, to think deeper, or having those teachers do that. The language structure, those complex sentences, extracting the meaning. Sometimes it's using complex sentences when you're speaking in class, just to give them exposure to that. And then our literacy knowledge, the patterns we see, the visuals that the author's putting, especially in nonfiction, those graphs, maybe pictures with a caption, the evidence, the tools for the author's purpose. It could also be the fact that you're building on a series. Don't we all love a good series? We do. I'm reading through Harry Potter again. And the first time you hear about Hogwarts and he gets on the train and you're meeting Dumbledore, who protects everybody, and Hagrid, who's this lovable kind of goofy guy, but he's big and he's fun, then I can't wait to go back. And the next book that I read, I already know I'm going to Hogwarts. We want our students to have that literacy knowledge so they want to keep coming back to reading. Going back to our sample, we will look at the comprehension side, and we may have to cut this one a little bit shorter just because of time. But what evidence do you see that the teacher is focusing on the comprehension pieces of the reading and the infinity diagram? And you can highlight, circle, discuss, and we'll give you a few minutes to talk about that when we come back.
together. We are 10 minutes to lunch, so we are excited. We heard a lot of great conversation. Becky is going to come around and would love to hear out from the crowd. So what are some things that you noticed about our language comprehension lesson, either in that elementary space or that middle school space?
She said pre-taught vocabulary.
Poetry, there's a short story, there's a news article. So we get to use the text structure on the real comprehension in different genres. And then the guided question alone, whether they need to be brave, will cause our students to think about bravery and being able to different text sets to help support what they think about bravery and what it looks like in various ways.
She said that it has different genres that it addresses in the middle school lesson plan, and she also hit on the verbal reasoning, how it went through that questioning process specifically with braveries, and had them discuss that as they were reading.
Thank you. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about what we call the elephant in the room, and we only give ourselves 7 minutes to talk about it. But what we're going to be talking about is how